Every night, as the last bus arrives at a station, a man getting off sees a woman at the bus stop. The woman, with her hair down and wearing a white long dress, looks like a ghost. The man is intrigued because she only sits at the bus stop but never boards the bus. One night, the man asks her about his curiosity. He notices a huge suitcase in front of her and assumes she might be waiting for a taxi. Learning that she lost her phone, he offers to help her find it by calling. Suddenly, the woman asks the man if he knows her. Confused and thinking he might have been too forward, he quickly leaves. On another rainy night, the man sees her again at the bus stop. He kindly offers his umbrella, but she does not take it, instead saying she is cold and wants to go to his house to shelter from the rain. Surprised that a beautiful woman would suggest coming to his home, possibly hinting at a romantic encounter, he takes her home with curiosity and unease. At home, seeing her drenched, he hands her a towel. However, as he takes the towel back from her, he feels a surge of panic. He notices her fingernails are all turned downward. Frightened, the woman suddenly opens her suitcase, pulls out a sharp knife, and stares at him menacingly. After a while, in the dark of night, she leaves his house with her suitcase and heads to a peculiar lighting store in a deep alley. Her gaze fixes on a flickering light bulb. The store, filled with various styles of lamps, always attracts people with its prominent lights every night. Some come to buy bulbs energetically, while others, nervous, quickly leave without purchasing anything. Whenever a customer buys a bulb, the owner records something in a ledger. Strangely, this ledger resembles a nurse's log from a hospital located in a secluded place. Kwon Young-ji, a nurse in the hospital's ICU, often meets unusual patients, such as a man who cannot hear any surrounding sounds and only asks where the morgue is. Before she can answer, he mysteriously vanishes, only to appear at the lighting store, incessantly walking around looking at bulbs, as though there is a secret connection between the store and the hospital. Late at night, after the mysterious woman in the white dress leaves the store, she passes by a middle school student, Ju Hyun-ju, who runs errands for her mother by buying bulbs from the store. Passing the dark alley in front of the store, Ju Hyun-ju always feels scared. Rumors among her classmates say that someone wanders around the alley at night, and strange singing can be heard. This evening, as Ju Hyun-ju walked through the alley, she indeed heard strange noises emanating from the darkness, and it seemed like there was a ghostly shadow at the end. Frightened, Ju Hyun-ju didn't dare look closely, and instead hurried to the lighting store on the other end of the alley. Being a regular customer, she was well acquainted with the store owner. Ju Hyun-ju told the owner about her ghostly encounter. Surprisingly, the owner said he could see them too. He explained to Ju Hyun-ju that among the customers who visit the store each night, some are ordinary people while others carry a strange aura. For instance, last night a man who was frozen came into the store claiming his home heating was broken. However, upon closer inspection, it was evident that his body was covered in ice, as if he had been frozen by the cold. Moreover, some customers in the store's light did not cast any shadows. The owner warned Ju Hyun-ju that if she ever encountered these strange people, she should pretend not to see them. After leaving the store, the owner, alone with the light bulbs, revealed his true aged and wrinkled face under the dim light, shedding his youthful and handsome facade. On another rainy night, Ju Hyun-ju went back to the lighting store to buy more bulbs for her mother. As she passed through the dark alley, she bravely turned on a small lamp the owner had given her. Deep in the alley, Ju Hyun-ju saw a tall, strange woman standing there. Kind-hearted Ju Hyun-ju approached and walked alongside her, sharing her umbrella. However, as they walked, Ju Hyun-ju noticed the woman's hair growing wildly and her height increasing rapidly, almost doubling, resembling a thin, tall ghost. Terrified, Ju Hyun-ju remembered the owner's advice and tried to stay calm as she turned to leave. But behind her, the ghostly figure limped towards her. Ju Hyun-ju ran to the lighting store at the end of the alley for help. The owner asked her to leave first, while he took off his sunglasses and stared intently at the ghostly woman. Strangely, upon seeing the owner's eyes, the ghost seemed frightened and did not pursue further. Near the lighting store, a young woman with short hair, Yoon Seon-hae, moved into a quietly situated house she had carefully selected. Before renting, the landlord told her that one of the rooms was under repair and unavailable. Yoon Seon-hae hung a curtain over the door of this unusable room and settled in to work. However, every night she would hear a young man singing outside her window, making her feel deceived by the landlord. Enduring the noise and working until she was sleepy, she was unaware of a shadow that slowly rose on the wall and embraced her. In the early hours, while Yoon Seon-hae was reading in the living room, the house lights suddenly went out. She checked the fuse box, suspecting the old house was to blame, but did not dwell on it for long. Since moving into this room, the girl could always hear sounds coming from the room with the door that couldn't be opened, as if someone was secretly watching her. Out of curiosity, Yoon Seon-hae finally turned the doorknob and opened it to find a brightly lit incandescent lamp inside. Without thinking, she turned off the light. At that moment, a trembling song from a boy floated in from outside the window. This time, Yoon Seon-hae opened the window and confronted the boy about why he was singing in the middle of the night. To her surprise, the boy ran away as if he had seen a ghost. At night, the lights in Yoon Seon-hae's home would not turn on. Out of necessity, she found a flashlight in a box and went to the bathroom to shower. Under the dim light, clumps of long hair eerily hung down. After showering, Yoon Seon-hae realized that the drain was clogged with long hair that wasn't hers. Turning around, she saw that her room door had mysteriously opened, and the light in the previously unopenable room had turned back on. As the light suddenly came on, the singing boy ran to the corner of the alley and met the woman with the long nails, who was dragging a suitcase. He told her about his recent encounter with Yoon Seon-hae. When Yoon Seon-hae had confronted him, the boy saw another woman behind her, invisible to Yoon Seon-hae herself. At this moment, Yoon Seon-hae also sensed something strange at home and realized there was a female ghost hiding there. Perhaps the lights went out because the unclean presence needed to hide in the darkness. Curious about Yoon Seon-hae's situation, the nail woman wanted to enter the house to investigate. The singing boy tried to stop her, but during their argument, he was frightened by her flipped nails and fell to the ground. The nail woman told him that he was no different from her. Following her gaze, the boy saw his own leg bizarrely twisted. Confused and crying, he struggled to get up, desperately seeking a way out of the eerie alley, likewise wanting to escape. Yoon Seon-hae, after confirming there was a ghost in her house, desperately tried to flee. When the door wouldn't open, she frantically smashed the windows, continuously crying for help outside. Strangely, despite the quiet night, no one heard their cries. At the other end, in the ICU of a hospital, a group of patient families waited outside. The doctor explained that whether the patients would wake up depended on their own will to live. Thinking of the family's tears, Nurse Kwon Young-ji felt sad. She hid in the restroom, where someone knocked, seemingly a family member of a patient. The family member asked Kwon Young-ji where a patient's personal will comes from and how a comatose patient could generate consciousness. Kwon Young-ji had no answer but shared her own story. Previously, she had lost consciousness in an accident, and her mother prayed daily, staying by her side, trying to instill willpower into her daughter, Assistant Kwon Young-ji believes that what families can do seems to be just passive waiting, but all the companionship and prayers during this time turn into an invisible force. As Kwon Young-ji finished speaking, the family member suddenly banged on the bathroom door like a mad person, and the lights flickered on and off. In the darkness, the family member leaned over the partition, screaming at Kwon Young-ji like a female ghost. However, in an instant, the ghost disappeared and the lights returned to normal, making it all seem like a hallucination. Outside the hospital, strange and terrifying incidents continued at the lighting store. A month ago, a fire occurred in an apartment, instantly killing a girl living there. Soon after, a police officer at the bus station arrested a suspect. As the suspect was being detained, he stared at a nearby girl, his eyes wide with surprise. After the arrest, the officer lit a cigarette, but noticed his palm was covered in ashes, and his lighter wouldn't work. He didn't pay much attention and soon faced another case. The victim was an elderly man who lived alone and was found dead in his apartment, presumably from a heart attack. However, after examining the scene, the officer became suspicious of the circumstances of the man's death. Following clues at the scene, he began investigating a nearby restaurant and noticed mud stains on an electric delivery bike outside. Entering the restaurant, he ordered a bowl of noodles. The restaurant was empty except for the owner. The officer looked around and noticed a delivery box in a corner, confirming his suspicions. While eating, the officer brought up the elderly man's case to the owner. The old man was right-handed, yet the TV remote was placed on the left side. Additionally, there was a long black stain near the door, which the officer believed came from the noodle delivery box. After presenting the clues, he directly accused the noodle shop owner of having visited the old man's home and being the murderer. Faced with the officer's baseless accusations, the owner denied them. However, the officer persisted, and back at the police station, he found evidence that the restaurant man had indeed been at the old man's doorstep, deepening his suspicions. After work, the officer returned to his own empty, lonely house, devoid of any liveliness. Looking at an unused sanitary pad in the cupboard, he remembered his wife's recent pregnancy test. He then stared at a white mark on the wall where a photo of him and his wife had hung until recently. One night, a month later, the restaurant man was seen chasing a woman on his bike. An observing officer intercepted him. Shocked, the officer looked at the woman opposite him. Her face was covered in burn scars, and she was the victim of the fire from a month ago. On the day of his arrest, the detained man had seen the woman he had burned to death. At that moment, with blood tears streaming down her face as if resenting her fate, the subdued restaurant man exclaimed that the woman should not be appearing here. During an argument, the officer noticed that under the car headlights, the man's eyes appeared bizarrely fox-like. Amid the chaos, the restaurant man fled. Following the lights, the officer went to the lighting store deep in the alley to inquire. Coincidentally, the nail woman was there with her suitcase. The officer noticed fresh blood droplets on the path she had walked. The woman explained she was on her menstrual period. Thinking of the sanitary pads his wife left at home, the officer believed her and draped his coat over her shoulders. The woman, silent, looked sadly at a lamp inside the store before leaving, its filament dimming. After the nail woman left, only the store owner and the officer remained. The officer asked about the restaurant man's whereabouts, especially mentioning his strange eyes. Unbeknownst to him, his own eyes were also monstrously twisted. While speaking, his attention was drawn to a flickering light bulb. That night, following her mother's instructions, high school student Ju Hyun-ju went out to buy light bulbs again and met the nail woman on the road. The nail woman wondered why Ju Hyun-ju bought bulbs so frequently. On her way to the lighting store, Ju Hyun-ju also encountered a man complaining about the lack of heating at his home. He was restless, pacing back and forth, asking Ju Hyun-ju if she had seen a barking dog that kept him from sleeping. Ju Hyun-ju discreetly turned on her small lamp and saw his clothes covered in ice, marking him as one of the strange people the store owner warned about. Frightened, Ju Hyun-ju ran back home only to find her mother sitting in the dark living room, silent. Seeing her mother still silent, Ju Hyun-ju hugged her and shared her encounters with the strange people, promising to buy bulbs the next night. During the hug, Ju Hyun-ju noticed a pleasant floral scent on her mother, unaware that it came from the flowers laid in the coffin. Her mother's silence was due to cotton stuffed in her mouth because she had already passed away. At the moment, her mother's body was at the funeral home. Just before, the mortician had arrived to dress Ju Hyun-ju's mother in funeral attire and prepare her appearance. Suddenly, the deceased mother spoke, saying she did not want to die just yet. The mortician advised her to let go of her attachments and accept death, then place the body in the refrigeration unit. The mother felt the cabinet was too dark, to which the mortician responded that she would soon go to a bright place where all memories of the mortal world would be forgotten. Reluctant to leave the living world, the mother could only sob in the dim cabinet. Surrounded by death in their daily lives were not just the mortician, but also the ICU nurse, Kwon Young-ji. That night, Kwon Young-ji arrived at the hospital for her night shift, but encountered a soaking wet man in the elevator. Hearing that Kwon Young-ji was an ICU nurse, the man, with a sad tone, asked about the condition of critically ill patients and whether they could wake up. After hearing her uncertain answer, water suddenly pooled at the man's feet. Kwon Young-ji turned around to find that the water was coming from the man himself. As he cried, the water level in the elevator rose quickly, soon submerging Kwon Young-ji, making it hard for her to breathe. Suddenly, everything returned to normal, and the man disappeared. Kwon Young-ji calmed down and went to the nursing station, where colleagues were discussing a patient with delusions and hallucinations due to alcoholism. Kwon Young-ji volunteered to take responsibility for this patient. While caring for the alcoholic patient, She recounted the man's nonsensical talk. When not lucid, the man seemed to see falling dirt, subconsciously urging someone to dodge it. At that time, Kwon Young-ji noticed a man who could not speak and had asked her where the morgue was, his clothes covered in dirt. At bedtime, the darkness of the room frightened the man. Kwon Young-ji stayed by his bedside and shared her secrets with him. She moved her hair aside to reveal a scar from surgery, a reminder of her past car accident which had left her unconscious in the ICU, teetering on the edge of life and death. After waking up, Kwon Young-ji began to see strange people, like the dirt-covered man who asked about the morgue and the man in the elevator with flowing water. Kwon Young-ji believed these individuals were on the boundary between life and death, neither fully alive nor dead, just like she had been. They were unconscious, hovering at the brink of life and death, making the ICU a place of transition between life and death. Here, some live and some die. The man asking about the morgue had been buried alive due to debt and, worried about being a burden, refused treatment, preferring to die. Now, to help the man, Kwon Young-ji removed sand from his ears and put headphones on him so he could hear the sounds around him. This encouragement brought signs of life back to the man who was near death. She also shared her story with the alcoholic man, believing that, like her, he could see strange people because he too had hovered at the edge of life and death. Kwon Young-ji then warned him to be careful. Once one falls into the void of unconsciousness, returning to reality might become impossible. In the dead of night, all these individuals, the singing man unable to escape, Yoon Seon-hae trapped in her apartment, the frostbitten man, the office worker on the bus, and the detective pursuing a killer, were patients in the ICU. They had all temporarily lost their memories, struggling endlessly on the brink of life and death. The flickering light bulbs in the lighting store symbolized their will to live and served as emblems of life. The mysterious lighting store acted as a transit station between the living world and the afterlife for these dying patients. Night after night, an elder who had seen through life and death, like a quiet soul ferryman, wiped the bulbs that signified life and death, guarding this threshold of the spirit world. Office worker Kim Hyun-min had a beautiful girlfriend. One night, planning to visit her after work for her birthday and propose, he was deterred by her text, suggesting she didn't want him to come. Unknown to him, his girlfriend, who was deaf and mute, was disliked by his mother and asked to leave him. That night, his girlfriend, Lee Ji-young, tearfully packed her bags, deciding to heed his mother's advice and stop clinging to the relationship. Unaware, Kim Hyun-min waited at the bus stop, texting her that he would arrive soon. That night on the same bus were Yoon Seon-hae and her girlfriend, a lesbian couple with the girlfriend being older. They planned to rent a place together but were mistaken by a realtor for mother and daughter. Upset by her girlfriend's lack of explanation, Yoon Seon-hae angrily left, blaming her for hiding their relationship. Her girlfriend, not wanting Yoon Seon-hae to suffer, followed her onto the bus and placed Yoon Seon-hae's discarded red high heels by her seat. The same evening, a boy who enjoyed singing and basketball horsed around with his friends. High school girl Ju Hyun-ju was picked up by her mother after school. They shared an umbrella on the way home, laughing and chatting like sisters. All these different individuals coincidentally entered the same bus, driven by Oh Seung-won. Before driving, Oh Seung-won noticed something wrong with the bus's tires and planned to check it nearby, but was told any repairs not at the main garage would be out of pocket. To save money, he risked driving on a rainy night. Oh Seung-won drove the last bus slowly, each passenger preoccupied with their thoughts. Suddenly, the bus lost control, and despite Oh Seung-won's efforts, a tragic accident occurred. The bus flipped and plunged into the river. This scene was witnessed by Kim Hyun-min's deaf-mute girlfriend, who knew early on that her boyfriend was on the bus. She hurriedly called the police but could not make any sound over the phone. Rescue teams arrived and the bus was salvaged. All passengers and the driver were urgently taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, due to the severity of the accident, Kim Hyun-min's spine was almost completely severed. On that night, driver Oh Seong-won inhaled a lot of river water. The others were also in a near-death coma. Despite the doctor's efforts, some tragically passed away, including Oh Seung-won and Yoon Seon-hae's girlfriend. In the hospital corridor, Kim Hyun-min's parents awaited news of their son's awakening. Rescuers gave them Kim Hyun-min's phone, which had received a call from his deaf-mute girlfriend. His mother hung up immediately and later messaged that Kim Hyun-min's death was because of his girlfriend, blaming her for the accident he suffered while trying to meet her. Dramatically, Kim Hyun-min was eventually revived by the doctors. His parents checked his phone and saw a message from his girlfriend saying she was going to where Kim Hyun-min was. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they quickly informed her that Kim Hyun-min was still alive. She saw the message, but in her struggle, lost 10 fingernails and sadly, could not be saved. After her death, the mortician placed her body in a refrigeration unit. In life, she often waited for Kim Hyun-min at a bus stop adorned with cherry blossoms, where they expressed their love by playing drums. Even in death, she still guarded the same platform every night, tapping her overturned nails on the bench due to her endless love for him. Despite being deaf and mute, she miraculously spoke in this strange realm between life and death. Regrettably, her boyfriend Kim Hyun-min, also in a near-death state, had lost his memories of her. Each time he got off the bus, he couldn't remember his beloved girlfriend. Due to his spine being severed in the accident, his body would split in half as he walked. To help him, she repeatedly sewed his waist back together. In this realm where the living and the dead linger, a 3-day funeral ritual is customary, providing time for farewells before the deceased are sent off. Her time at the edge of life and death was almost up, but in the living world, the mortician found the door to her refrigeration unit stuck, unable to open. He knew she had many regrets and was not ready to leave. As she sewed her boyfriend's waist, perhaps her love kept him alive, even though he had not awakened. Yoon Seon-hae's girlfriend also had unfinished business. During the accident, she protected Yoon Seon-hae by holding her tightly. Even in death, her body could not be separated from Yoon Seon-hae's. Thus, the ghost lying on Yoon Seon-hae in their rental home was actually her loving girlfriend. After seeing the flickering light bulbs in the house, Yoon Seon-hae's memories suddenly returned. She thought of their love and arguments, ultimately crying silently in the dark night. Also trapped was high school student Ju Hyun-ju. Since moving into the apartment, her mother had consistently asked her to buy light bulbs every night, but never spoke or explained why she needed them. One night, Ju Hyun-ju became angry. The road to the lighting store was too frightening for her to go alone. Upset, she cried, unable to understand why her mother repeatedly sent her to buy useless light bulbs. Ju Hyun-ju didn't know that the light bulbs were linked to her life. Her mother was trying to pull her out of a coma caused by a car accident, saving her from death's grasp. Similarly confused was a police officer who sheltered in the store during a rainstorm. The lighting store owner always gave the officer a strange, indescribable feeling. When the rain stopped, the officer left the store to try to exit the dark alley. At the end of the alley was a middle school with student names on a classroom cupboard. Recognizing one of the names, the officer's lost memories began to resurface. Previously, his wife had been pregnant, but after months, there was no sign of pregnancy. Medical checks revealed the child had died in the womb, leaving his wife deeply depressed and the officer feeling guilty for neglecting her due to his busy work schedule. As he recalled these memories, the officer desperately ran through the alley, but he could not find his beloved wife nor exit the eerie alley. Lighting a cigarette, he discovered his previously broken lighter had mysteriously repaired itself. Using the lighter, he noticed something odd about his shadow on the wall. Panicked, he returned to the lighting store. The store owner served him hot coffee, which the officer drank but could not taste or feel the heat. He also realized that the night in the lighting store seemed never to end. After hearing his story, the store owner removed his sunglasses to reveal eyes as bizarre as those of a fox. He shared that he too had once been confused about the lighting store, a long time ago after a disaster. The owner and his young daughter had been buried under the rubble. In the pitch-dark ruins, his sensible daughter peeled a candy for him. After eating the candy, he promised to find someone to rescue her. Struggling out of the rubble, he stumbled into the lighting store at the end of the alley. The store's previous owner, a mysterious woman, refused to help him. In frustration, he knocked over some lamps, and suddenly his body stiffened. The woman picked up a lamp from his hand, and the store's light returned to normal. She told him that there was also a bulb for his daughter in the store. Observing the flickering lights, the man realized the true meaning of the lighting store. It was a place between life and death. Everyone who entered the lighting store was about to die. Among them, some might still have a chance to survive, while others showed no signs of life. The man, already dead in the rubble, realized he had died. Unable to accept this, he cried out, pleading with the store owner to save his daughter. Because of the man's belief, the owner made a deal with him, allowing him to take over as the lighting store's owner, becoming the ferryman between life and death. After hearing the store owner's story, the police officer understood the store's significance but could not grasp his own situation. Was he alive or dead? A human or a ghost? The owner bluntly told him that he was still alive, and in this world, living people moving around might seem like ghosts. As a detective, the officer struggled to believe the owner's words. The owner then mentioned a list of children's pre-birth names, all of which the officer had seen in the mysterious middle school classroom, including the name he had chosen for his own stillborn child. Hearing this, the officer couldn't help but weep and started to believe the owner. He asked why the owner had not told him the truth earlier. The owner explained that because the officer was still alive and could return to the living world, those who go back cannot take their memories of the lighting store with them, as it would blur the lines between the two worlds and cause hallucinations upon waking. The officer had one last question, wanting to know where the suspect he was chasing had gone. The owner explained that the suspect's presence was meant to lead the officer to the lighting store. The owner hinted that the officer should follow the light. Lighting his lighter, the officer saw a glimmer of hope. As the flame ignited in the ICU back in the real world, the officer opened his eyes and regained consciousness, finally waking up. In the realm between life and death, others continued to wander in confusion. One of them was a man constantly hearing a dog's bark. Unable to bear it one night, he ran out of his apartment, determined to find the annoying dog. Following the sound, he saw the dog in a deep alley. At the moment of eye contact with the dog, the man was stunned, remembering all his past incidents related to the dog. He had once fallen off a cliff in the mountains and fallen into a hypothermic coma. A search and rescue dog had stayed by his side, maintaining his body temperature and barking to alert rescuers. Thanks to the dog's company, he was eventually found by the rescue team. Unfortunately, the dog had passed away. Remembering the past, the man tearfully stroked the kind dog. In the pitch-dark night, the dog kept barking, seemingly signaling the man to follow. Following the dog, the man arrived at the lighting store, led there by the dog's barking. Under the dog's reminder, the man discovered his own life lamp. Back in the apartment late at night, the girl Ju Hyun-ju was still crying. She couldn't understand why her mother made her buy light bulbs every night. Her mother, unable to speak, only silently picked up her daughter's bracelet from the ground. In the hospital, nurse Kwon Young-ji explained to a new colleague about Ju Hyun-ju's experience. During the bus accident, her mother desperately protected her daughter with her own body, significantly shielding her from the impact and sacrificing her life in the process. Her funeral was scheduled for the next day. Similarly, Yoon Seon-hai's girlfriend, who died while protecting Yoon Seon-hai during the accident, still embraced her lover from behind in the liminal space of their apartment, guiding her to the lighting store to find her own light bulb. In the ICU, there was also a young boy in a coma from the accident. Kwon Young-ji placed a basketball, which the boy liked, under his bed, hoping to assist him. This basketball also appeared in the liminal alley. Following the basketball, bus driver Oh Seung-won found the boy. Unable to leave the alley and deeply despondent, Oh Seung-won spoke gently, offering to carry the boy out. He carried the boy through the alley, directing him to the lighting store and advising him to find the right bulb on his own will. Before the boy left, Oh Seung-won, tearful and apologetic, expressed his guilt for the accident caused by him. Following Oh Seung-won's guidance, the boy, dragging his injured leg, entered the store, and driven by his will, found his own lamp among many. Touching the bulb, it brightly lit up, reigniting the fire of life. The boy woke up and was discharged, later telling Kwon Young-ji that he occasionally had strange dreams of wandering somewhere. Kwon Young-ji smiled slightly, knowing the seemingly stoic but warm-hearted man who carried the boy in the dream. After carrying the boy out, Oh Seung-won returned to the alley and went outside Yoon Seon-hai's apartment to apologize to her girlfriend. Recognizing that life is full of unexpected events and that, like them, he was also a victim of misfortune, Oh Sung-won expressed his intention to continue finding living people and leading them to the lighting store. Her girlfriend mentioned that there were still survivors in a nearby building. After thanking her, Oh Sung-won went outside the building and saw Ju Hyun-ju's mother, initially thinking she was alive until she turned back sobbing, making him realize she was already dead. Leaving the building was her way of trying to save someone she couldn't let go of. Late at night, the mother hurried to the lighting store. Unable to speak because her mouth was stuffed with cotton, she could only hand over a bracelet engraved with her daughter's name to the store owner. The owner understood that the mother was there to get a light bulb for Ju Hyun-ju, who, after a disagreement, refused to come to the store herself. The mother had no choice but to do this. The owner shook his head, indicating that the bulbs must be personally collected by the individuals themselves. Desperate, the mother grabbed the owner, silently screaming. The owner, seeing this, took off his sunglasses, revealing his hidden eyes. Facing those eyes, the mother was almost stunned, picking up a candy beside her and peeling it open to put into the owner's mouth. In front of her, the woman's familiar actions overlapped with the store owner's memories. Suddenly, he realized that the woman in front of him was his daughter, who had peeled candy for him in the rubble years ago. Due to a deal with the previous owner, his daughter had survived that disaster and endured years of loneliness in the realm between life and death. Finally, the owner reunited with his daughter, and in a moment of realization, the man tearfully embraced his deeply cherished loved one. Outside the building at night, driver Oh Sung-won met Ju Hyun-ju and reminded her of her current situation. Ju Hyun-ju then realized she was a person close to death, recalling times when people seemed unable to see her. Oh Sung-won candidly shared her mother's unspoken distress. In an effort to send her daughter back to the living world, her mother had exhausted all her strength. Her mother returned home with her daughter's light bulb, which, because of her deep love for her daughter, the store owner had exceptionally handed over, breaking the rules. Her mother tried to give the bulb to Ju Hyun-ju, but she cried and refused to take it, not wanting to part from her mother and wishing to live together. Her mother was also in tears, unwilling to separate from her daughter, but desiring more than anything for her to live well. Thanks to the light given by her mother, Ju Hyun-ju eventually woke up from her coma. Months later, her father drove Ju Hyun-ju to school, cheering her on with a smile. The surviving Ju Hyun-ju strove to integrate into real life, but she also remembered everything inside that building and everything her mother had done for her. To not forget her mother, Ju Hyun-ju chose not to undergo treatment for delusional disorder after waking up. In the realm between life and death, her mother visited the lighting store every night, chatting and laughing with her father, enjoying her favorite candies from childhood. In the alley, persuaded by her girlfriend, Yoon Seon-hae tearfully walked out until she reached the lighting store, recognizing her own light bulb at a glance. The moment she touched the bulb, Yoon Seon-hae in the hospital regained consciousness, but immediately after, she stopped breathing. It turned out that in the lighting store, in order to stay close to her girlfriend, Yoon Seon-hae had deliberately broken her bulb. Now the alley's house no longer seemed dark and frightening to Yoon Seon-hae. Even in death, every day spent with her girlfriend was peaceful and beautiful. Meanwhile, others still clung to their unresolved attachments. The deaf-mute woman had died, but in the realm between life and death, she continued to mend her boyfriend Kim Hyun-min's severed waist. After the repair was complete, Kim Hyun-min successfully climbed out of the suitcase and stood up. At night, the woman tearfully boarded the bus Kim Hyun-min was on, asking why he didn't remember her, and if it was because he didn't love her enough. Reminded by his girlfriend, Kim Hyun-min learned the whole truth. His girlfriend urged him to find his own light bulb at the lighting store. After one last embrace with his girlfriend, a tearful Kim Hyun-min groped his way to the store. Guided by instinct and will, he found his light bulb. Watching her boyfriend's bulb light up, the woman cried even harder. Unable to let go of her boyfriend, who would have to survive alone, Kim Hyun-min, having found his light bulb, was able to wake up, but experienced confusion due to his extended stay in the realm between life and death. His mind was plagued with strange visions, which doctors dismissed as delusional disorder. Kim Hyun-min, determined to escape these haunting thoughts, threw his girlfriend's phone into the river and planned to return to his job and resume his normal life. One night, as Kim Hyun-min was about to enter the door code at his home's corridor, the lights suddenly went out. He waved at the sensor light, and when it abruptly turned on, his ghostly girlfriend appeared eerily in front of him. She could not let go of the fact that Kim Hyun-min had forgotten her and decided it was better to haunt him forever rather than move on. Meanwhile, in the lighting store, the old owner received another box of light bulbs that symbolized life. The owner knew that some bulb owners would wander there forever, while others were merely passing through. The deceased bus driver, Oh Seung-won, would forever remain in that space, continuing to drive his bus and guide lost souls. In the ICU, thanks to Kwon Young-ji's efforts, a man wandering in the darkness heard singing and followed the sound to find his way out and regain his life. Similarly, the awakened police officer went to a diner to meet the man he had suspected of being a criminal. After speaking with the lighting store owner, the officer realized that the man was not a suspect but a messenger who had guided him to the store. The messenger, now deceased, had sacrificed himself to save the officer. He explained that his existence was to maintain order by guiding those who could not stay in the living world to their appropriate places. The messenger had been pursuing a woman who had died in a fire, but was unaware of her death. He visited an elderly man to offer him a bowl of noodles before the man died. Noticing the officer's keen ability to see what others could not, the messenger hoped the officer would take over his job of guiding wandering souls to their rightful realms. The officer agreed and put on the messenger's sunglasses, becoming a soul guide in the living world. That same night, Kwon Young-ji was troubled by a vengeful spirit. The officer arrived, removed his sunglasses, and asked the spirit to follow him. In the days that followed, the officer adhered to his mission and one night came across a young man at a troubled high school. The young man told the officer that he too could see ghosts. With a snap of his fingers, it seemed the mysterious stories of life and death would continue.